Searches never last long. A lockdown can last weeks or months, but searches are always done within just a couple of days. This is because it is an incredible amount of work to search for contraband for the officers. You figure every inmate has personal books, sometimes thousands of pages of legal paper, bedding, clothes, and personal items, letters, photos. Going through all of that, looking for something as small as a razor blade or possibly a little amount of drugs, it has to be overwhelming. And as such, they never search more than a couple of days over the course of a lockdown. If you're locked down for 6 days or 6 months, they're only going to search once. As it turned out, this lockdown lasted about 5 days, and once we were off it, it was back to business as usual. As far as I know, they never did find out where the knife that had been used to assault Mike had come from. Of course, for all I know, the entire search was just an excuse to give one of their snitches an opportunity to pass off a kite saying exactly what happened. That's the thing about prison, is that you're always trying to figure out what's going on, but you're often missing information. They keep things from you, so you just have to take a best guess. Afternoon Yard ran once we came off of lockdown, and I went over to the remedial workout group to do my cherry pickers and my chain breakers. I looked up and saw Ty doing burpees with Sam. He was working out with the primary workout group. This was the workout group that had Irish before he went to the hole, and had Filthy and a couple other of the guys who were more well-liked. It hadn't occurred to me that Ty was with me in the remedial workout group, not because he couldn't keep up, but because they had disliked him. And apparently now they liked him. I guess after hearing him yell at the officers, they'd developed some respect for him. I saw him and Sam laughing and talking to each other, and Sam looked up and shot me a dirty look. I don't know exactly what Ty said at this point, but I know this is the point where my relationship with Sam soured. Up to this yard, I'd really felt like Sam thought that nobody good came out of Mendocino County, except Aaron. Aaron was a rig, and he was alright with me. And now that he was befriending Ty, I guess his opinion was changing, and if only one good person came out of Mendocino County, well, it was Ty, and Aaron might just be a piece of garbage. I wasn't quite on driftwood status, but I felt that all of the primary workout group guys, the guys that were in charge of things, were a little colder to me after this. Of course, prison politics is not capricious and arbitrary. I wasn't going to get stabbed just because all of a sudden people didn't like me very much. I'd have to make a mistake. Something would have to happen. Ty had a number of personality characteristics that I don't think were unique to him. I think a lot of us have known somebody like this, where whenever he was in a good mood, his energy levels would get up and his life would be going great, and he'd laugh and he'd have so many good ideas of fun things to do. We'd be walking past a bowling alley and he'd bet me that he could bowl a 200, and I don't even think he knows how to bowl. Whenever he was like this, he was a lot of fun to be around on the streets because the stakes were low. Whenever Ty kind of jauntily ran over to me and I could tell he was in one of his happy, manic phases where he didn't think about consequences, I was worried. This was not out on the streets bowling. This was in prison, and our lives were on the line. He was laughing and jovial and talking about how now everybody thought he was pretty cool and he was going to stay here for a while. He talked himself up about how he was going to get involved in the politics on the yard and everybody was going to respect him, and then they recalled the yard and we all went home. I was thinking on the way home that it couldn't be that the only reason that I was on the outs, that people didn't like me, was the remedial workout group. But Ty had jumped over to that side of the fence, as it were, and the grass appeared to be greener. He was much more well-liked for being able to keep up. That afternoon, I started bird bathing, which is something you have to do after yard because you work out and you're covered in sweat and you may not shower that day. You may not shower for 2 days. It is an inconvenience of the open tier design, where you see just the bars on the outside of your cell. There's no actual door that prevents people from walking up and saying hi and seeing that you're bird bathing. Counselor Renault was a professional. I imagine he'd been doing this for a long time, so it didn't seem to faze him that I was standing there with my gentleman's bits, just flapping in the breeze while I was bird bathing. He came up and he told me, "Hey, Channel, you can quit having people write me. I'm not going to read all these letters out to committee. You want out of here? Cool. You're on the next bus smoking, man. I got you out of here. You could be leaving tonight, all right?" I was relieved and ecstatic. I grabbed a towel and wrapped it around myself. My gamble had paid off. I'd written my wife and asked her to have anybody she could think of write my counselor and tell him to get me the heck out of here, because I could tell this was not a stable environment. If I didn't get out of here as quick as I could end up being a victim. I thanked Counselor Renault and I asked him, "Hey man, do you know where I'm going?" And he said he didn't care. He turned to leave, a little grumpy, honestly, but stopped about 2 steps away and looked back, said, "Hey, Channel, that thing about your father-in-law, is that true?" I had no idea what he was talking about. My father-in-law is an interesting character, a doctor, a psychiatrist, but I didn't know Renault knew anything about him. He must have written Renault. And I asked, "What thing?" And he says, "Was he really the assistant chief psychiatrist here at San Quentin?" He was. Absolutely he was. I'd forgotten about it until that moment, but absolutely he had worked at San Quentin, and maybe that was one of the reasons I was getting out of there so quick. Renault said, anyway, he sent his employment records, and I was really surprised. He turned and walked away, and I could hear him keep muttering to himself as he went. Who would have thought? That night, I waited for them to come around and tell me, "Hey, Channel, you're getting on a bus tomorrow morning." They tell you very last thing at night after roll call if you're going to be getting on a bus the next day, but they did not, so I had at least one more day there in Badger section in San Quentin. So I was trying to wind down the thought of the primary workout group and the remedial workout group. It really ate at me, the idea that I was making a target of myself because I wasn't in good enough physical health. That was the first night that I got up after lights out and exercised. But it wasn't the last. I did it almost the entirety of my term. Every night around 10 o'clock, I'd find some quiet, light exercise to do, just to try and catch up to that primary workout group. I never did, to be clear. I was always in very poor health. I've got problems with my lungs and my bones. But as I tell these stories, just remember every night around 10 o'clock, I'm doing just that extra little bit because my life might depend on it. Being fast, strong, ready. That's the difference between blood on the concrete and walking away from a situation, being a victim or a statistic, and making it back to your cell or your family at the end of your term. That's the thing, though, is that physical health, it's not just a prison thing. Our life depends on it out here, too. When I got out of prison, I let myself go. Heck, while I was in prison, I let myself go. And it is a foolish thing to do, to allow your health to deteriorate just because there isn't somebody who's going to stab you if you're not faster and stronger than they are. Some people die from knives. Many, many people die from heart disease, lung cancer, obesity. So take a moment and remember that your physical health is life or death. It's not just whenever you're on a concrete yard and there's big angry skinheads with knives. It's every day. And it's how you make sure that you're going to be there for your family in the long term is by taking care of yourself.